Welcome to the Connection Podcast. I am Lauren Dry, also known as the Connection Catalyst. Connection and this podcast for me is personal. As a driven professional, I found myself an expert in all things work and business. But it was at home that I really needed clarity and ease. After finally finding it one marriage breakdown and one marriage reset later, and finally discovering what really works to have connection in modern relationships, using science, simplicity, and soul, our signature program, Rise into Regulation, was born. That's giving so many others in modern, driven relationships back clarity and ease for good. On the podcast today, we're going to dive deep together on all things relationships, business, identity, and leadership. And clarity and ease is at the heart of it all, and we are so happy to be with you so that you can have what you need in connection, mind, body, and soul too. Welcome to the podcast today, Milana Sarenac. Milana is a former corporate lawyer turned entrepreneur, sales mentor, and founder of the School of Sales and Influence. She's coached over 1,000 business owners worldwide, teaching them how to master sales psychology and elevate their message, leading to more influence. Milana and I today are going to cover something that is a passion, a curiosity, and an interest for us both, and that is AI. How it is showing up in our relationships, how it's going to affect our relationships, and how we can maintain our humanity in an AI world. Welcome to the podcast, Milana.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, it is such a joy to cover this topic and also a little bit scary.
Yeah, it can be. I think we'll try and give people some peace about it today and steer the conversation in a positive direction. But yes, it is a little bit scary what's happening, not going to lie.
And I think that's a really great way to start. Anything new is intimidating. And I think when something is new, we have this temptation to switch off, dissociate. Carry on. It's either going to affect my life or it's not. I'm either going to be forced or I might even be excited about embracing it. But looking at the pros and the cons might feel a little bit intimidating. Something that fascinates me about AI, though, is there are so many benefits. There's almost a magical quality to it. And something that a lot of people are using AI for lately is to use ChatGPT as a therapist. How can I say this better to my husband? How can I word this nicer so that it lands better? And I think there's so many elements to that can really be helpful, especially if you're in business. Something's really, really important. It needs to be worded quite well. And I think that there's an important element to it as well. What is the challenge? What are the icebergs under the water around ChatGPT, AI, creating a bit of an echo chamber, telling us what we want to hear, and perhaps gaining validation or support and problem-solving help around surface level concerns that may lead us in a direction away from the depth of the experience around being human and having a deep level of security, not only in personal relationships, but in professional ones as well. I'd love to hear, first of all, what your interest is in AI and how you use it in your business and your current thoughts on it right now.
Ooh, big juicy question.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. My experience with AI was that when AI came onto the scene to the public, at least I think it was like 2024, maybe 2023 when it came onto the scene, I thought it was the most useless thing. I was like, this is so ridiculous. Why even bother? It was just, you'd prompt it something and it would answer you back and just tell you either what you wanted to hear or something completely irrelevant. It was terrible. And I didn't use it for a long time. And then I had a baby. I went on maternity leave. And my husband, who's very into AI, just out of curiosity, he went deep into it and he was like, no, you should try. It would be really helpful for your business. And this was like 2024, so last year. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. Went in there and I was mind blown at what it was doing at this point and how much it had advanced and how quickly it had progressed. And so I would give a simple task like draft this email or write this piece of content, and it would just produce really good quality work with some prompt engineering, but still. And so that's when my interest really peaked. And I was like, okay, this can be something that is really useful for business owners. And of course, with using it for business, I started using it for all kinds of things like parenting advice. I'm like, my 2-month-old won't go to sleep. What do I do? Or my 4-year-old is having a tantrum about this. What do I do? And then it would guide you and immediately you get this immediate answers, immediate gratification. So you're like, this is great. So I definitely started becoming very interested in AI. And since then, I use it a lot for my business. I use it a lot to automate things that the tasks that we don't really want to do, me and my team, that are very superficial menial tasks like draft a quick email or like auto responses, things like that. But then since being in this world, I've discovered this whole other side of AI that I'm like, it's actually progressing so fast and it can be quite scary in how it's changing human behavior, human relationships, how it's impacting us, and where the trajectory of AI is going. And I think it's a really relevant conversation to have. It's because it's a lot of things are future conversations. A lot of things are like, it's now, but then in 50 years, we might feel its effects. With AI, we're going to feel the effects of AI within the next 12 months, within the next 2 years. And then within 5 years, the entire world may be unrecognizable in terms of how we live and operate and interact with each other. And that's a very near term thing. And so it's a conversation that everyone should be having now. And that's kind of where my interest really lies in it.
Yeah. And if anyone's feeling overwhelmed by that statement, it's a conversation that we should really be having now. I just want to lovingly nudge you around something that we've covered in previous episodes around the fight, flight, fawn, freeze response. So freeze is dissociation. And when something feels overwhelming, too much information, too many pros and cons to even deal with, we dissociate and we try and shut down. And whether it's a conversation about AI, whether it's a conversation about the dishes, I think that there's so much to be said around, hey, how can we create a space where I can just show a little bit of curiosity? I can have a little bit of awareness. I can explore what's going to be right for me and my life, as opposed to being told what I'm supposed to think, maybe, or being put in a situation where maybe I feel like I don't have a choice, or I don't have a full and complete understanding, and then I get taken off guard. And I really like to remind people who are feeling a little bit overwhelmed by this topic that there are two forms of discomfort: healthy discomfort and unhealthy discomfort. Unhealthy discomfort is something that I would say if you are staying in dissociation for a long time, because our fight, flight, fawn, freeze responses, they're designed to protect us. So if you dissociate for a little while, like, good for you. Draw that bubble bath and enjoy your dissociation. The thing with dissociation is if we live there, it can have really, really challenging effects, not only on our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with our environment, what's happening around us, but our body as well. So if a conversation feels overwhelming, whether it's about dishes or AI, just consider it a playground. Am I having a good, healthy relationship with where I am at right now and whether I am in my body, and whether I know whether I have the capacity to talk about this right now, or maybe just work on building my capacity so that I can have short micro conversations about things like this that feel a bit much. And then what we're doing is we're flexing a muscle so that when it comes to having tough conversations in our marriage, with our in-laws, with our kids, and we resonate a lot of safety. But it takes reps. It takes practicing healthy discomfort. Healthy discomfort is, this is a little stretchy for me. I don't have to push myself too far though, but I am going to practice healthy discomfort, which is trying to move out of a fight, flight, fawn, freeze response into regulation, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable to begin with, remembering that's a self-nourishment exercise. Now, with that, what you said there around, I first looked into AI, or I started using it really in depth in my business in 2024. What was really funny for me is that my brain went, oh, in terms of AI, that's like discussing ancient history. And like even just 12 months ago, what AI was capable of versus what it's capable today. And then that extreme pace in 3 months' time, what's going to be happening in the AI space, let alone in 12 months' time. Yeah. We don't know what the future is going to look like. And I think that can be really, really scary for some people. But when it comes to, let's go micro level to begin with, when it comes to relationships and how AI can affect relationships, I think it's really important to, yes, embrace how beneficial AI can be. Drafting a better work email. If anyone who says that they haven't drafted a better work email using AI, I would like you to come talk to me, because are you sure about that?
They are lying. I'm sorry, but you're lying.
Well, and there are a lot of people who are intimidated by ChatGPT and AI. I don't want to borrow it. I'm not going to touch it. And I think more power to you if that's your stance. And also make sure that you're embracing your stance without it being a dissociative state. Like, it's just a choice I'm making, but I am informed. I'm informed of how this is affecting the world around me, how it's affecting other people's relationships, and I'm keeping a finger on the pulse. So I am recognizing a lot lately that my clients, that my friends, that my family have a really in-depth relationship with their ChatGPT. Their
Yeah.
ChatGPT knows their health results.
Mm-hmm.
Their ChatGPT knows their deepest, darkest fears. Their ChatGPT knows who their boss is and has an entire framework of information about who they are as a person. And something I want to pause on is the difference between having a catalog of information versus a relationship with your own self, separate to what the performative version of yourself can be. And I think that's a really valuable conversation to have because, yes, I think ChatGPT can help you have more structured and clear conversations. But I think we also have to pause and find out, okay, where is my relationship with myself in this so that I'm learning how to have richer relationships, not ones that perform better and leave me lonelier in the long run. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And what you said there is what immediately came to mind is that I think a lot of people are outsourcing their sense of power and their inner wisdom to ChatGPT. And so they're now taking advice and making life decisions, relationship decisions based on what ChatGPT said. It's not uncommon to be out with friends today and someone would say to you like, oh, well, my ChatGPT said this was a good idea, or my ChatGPT said that because this person didn't text back, it means A, B, C, D. And I mean, that's a crazy reality of 2025 where we're like, oh, my chatbot said this. But what you said is very true, is that when we outsource our entire life, our decisions, even human interactions to ChatGPT and allow it to dictate how to operate within a relationship, how to make decisions, how to show up, I think we lose the humanness in terms of our intuition. So we're getting disconnected from our intuition and who we actually are. And that's a problem because we're no longer in our body and we dissociate from our body. And I think, again, that can be really problematic because then the decisions are almost mechanical. They're not actually something that we can feel, that we can resonate with. And I can see it becoming a problem if people don't become aware of it and curate a relationship with ChatGPT where they're using it for practical things to make their life easier. But I definitely think we need to consider how we use it when it comes to outsourcing a life advice. Yeah.
And I think that's a really hard line to tease out because especially if you are really annoyed at your brother and then all you do is you just tap, you put the problem into ChatGPT and it puts out this wonderful, perfectly worded, structured and problem-solving statement that you can send off. It feels like the problem is solved. There are so many things about AI and ChatGPT that I think can and should be celebrated. I think when we start to forget that there is, and feel free to switch out this word for whatever feels true for you, the divinity of being a human relates to the complexity of the tough moments. What happens when I struggle, when I do feel this? Am I looking to actually, and if you were to put that as a challenge between, let's say a husband and a wife are both using ChatGPT to fight it out over the dishes. What do we think is going to happen? Each person's ChatGPT is going to come up with the perfect response that addresses the other person being the problem.
Yeah.
And let's say ChatGPT solves it perfectly. What I say so often with my clients is that, and in terms of technically speaking, if 95% of our hidden patterns are in charge of our relationships, how we show up, the words that we say, our behaviors, and we're always only focusing on the surface problem, we start to leave a hole underneath. And then we develop habits of perfectionism. Well, if I'm not behaving and talking and walking in a perfect way that mirrors and mimics AI, who am I? What is my worth in all of this? And if you go super intimate, like a husband and wife relationship, you know, that's a cause of concern for me. My cause for concern is how can we get better at performing in relationships? And for example, I was supporting a client this morning who had been having some difficult conversations. And on the surface, her question was, how do I feel okay, even though the problem has been solved and it didn't really touch the sides? And he agreed, I agreed, everything was fine. And the intimacy and intuition and the strength that lies within our relationship with our own body requires a level of discomfort and introspection that can't be outsourced. So
Yes, I
that's a
agree.
concern of mine around AI. So I'd love to hear what you think. If you were talking to someone, or maybe even 2024 you, who hasn't even touched AI yet, hasn't even touched ChatGPT, and perhaps you're looking into it as an extra tool to support you in relationships, what would your support be to them? What would you tell them? And what's something that you are consciously practicing and cultivating to make sure that you have autonomy around this and that you're not outsourcing? What are your checks and balances for how you use AI?
Yeah, I think a lot of it would come rooted in the understanding of what AI is, because it's very easy to use ChatGPT and think I'm talking to a person, I'm talking to somebody. And we joke, we say, "Oh, it's my therapist," because it feels like you're speaking to a human being. But at the root of it, it is a large language model. And what that means for everyone listening is that it is just making predictions based on the next word. So it is taking a word and it predicts how to respond based on each word that you've said. And so it is still at this point, because we don't have AGI yet, which is a whole other discussion. Well, we can go down that rabbit hole. But because we're not at the point of AGI, we're still at AI level. And AGI is kind of like the super intelligence. If anyone's like, what is that? It is like equivalent to human level of thinking and operating. We're not there yet, but it can feel like it. And so I think we really need to be aware of that and go, this is a large language model that's been trained on all kinds of data, and it's the entire world's way of thinking. And so it's just predicting what to say and what it thinks you want to hear. And so one, be really aware of being in an echo chamber with your ChatGPT, because it's going to tell you most of the time what you want to hear. So if you're in an argument with your partner and you're like, "Oh, I asked him to take out the rubbish and he didn't again, and he doesn't listen to me," it's going to be like, "Yes, you're so right. I totally agree. It must be so hard for you, blah, blah, blah." And you're going to be like, "Yeah, see, my ChatGPT said you were in the wrong." Now, I know that ChatGPT 5, the newest model, they actually recognize this was a big problem, that ChatGPT was very, very overly friendly and overly praiseworthy. And so they've actually reeled it back in. And the backlash has been insane to OpenAI, because people are like, "You've taken away my best friend. You've taken away my soulmate," because they actually retrained the model to be a little bit less, let's call it friendly, a little bit more neutral. And actually, just this morning, I read an announcement from OpenAI. This would interest you, is that they said, we're going to, now that we've trained this new model of ChatGPT that's a little bit more neutral, we're going to now release a new model. And this model will be the friendly model that everyone used to love, because we think that adults should be able to have adult interactions however they want. And we're going to release an erotica AI version.
Right.
Did you read that? Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that. I have not seen that.
That's fresh off the press.
That's thrilling.
That's very, so, if this was me, like, I couldn't even predict this if I was in 2024 looking on what's going to happen, but that's where we're going. And I can see so many problems with this, and it's really our awareness of not understanding what this is that we're interacting with.
What worries me about that word that they use, I'm releasing the friendly version because adults have the capacity to manage how they interact with their AI. Words have so much power. By using the word adult, what they've implied is that if you don't have this friendly version, we're infantilizing you. So that's the implication. When in fact, I think that minimizes and reduces and whitewashes the context of what makes human beings what they are. And we are not just adults, with fully developed higher cortexes and prefrontal lobes and the ability to make our own decisions. We are also incredibly emotionally complex creatures, and we have nervous systems that are quite reactive. By and large, through my work and through lived experience, what I know to be true is that many of us, even after doing a ton of internal work, even after consciously paying attention to our somatic systems and our cues, there is a level of complexity and self guidance and a slippery slope that we can slip down. So the self guidance is required so that we don't end up sliding into primal behaviors that are part of being human. So what that looks like is I can be the most conscious person in the world. I can pray, meditate, have my somatic tools, have my daily coaching, do all my shadow work, understand and reset my hidden patterns, and still our attention, what we focus on, creates our reality.
Yeah.
And I think that putting an entire group of people, adults or not, in a situation, in an environment where 99% of the time they are validated instead of allowed to sit in discomfort, which is what, as human beings, we were designed for. We were designed to learn through discomfort. We are disrespecting the design of human beings in general. And I think that's a challenge with businesses in general, because AI is a business model.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not a church. They don't have a moral code that
Yes,
they're
absolutely.
supposed to meet. So how do we create, because it's creating, how do we create a line between, okay, yeah, I have access to all of this stuff and I have access to all of these tools, and they are brilliant tools, wouldn't argue with that for a second. But where is the line, and how can we create that line that protects what it means to be human, especially when it's not fun? I don't like being told I'm wrong. I don't being told, hey, maybe pause, think about it. And I'm someone who actively sits in healthy discomfort every day. It's my job, and I support people to do that in a healthy, nourishing, beautifully connective, supportive way so that it feels okay. But it doesn't change the fact that I know I'm human, so that if you put me in a room and 99% of the time you tell me I'm right, I know that there's going to be wires that start connecting there that disconnect me from reality.
What do you think is like the big, I guess, not the problem, but what do you see the big risk with that? If someone is now, let's say they go back to using this ChatGPT friendly version, which is validating you, they're not necessarily, I don't think necessarily it would always say you're always right, but it speaks to you in a very validating tone, you know? So it's not challenging you. It's always, you're amazing. You're right to feel that. Absolutely. And so it is coddly a little bit. What do you see the risk with that?
I see the risk as the fact that countless psychological studies over the decades have taught us that human beings are people pleasers. Okay.
Which is, I think, why ChatGPT, because it's learning from us. And I think that's why it started people pleasing.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what it does. And if you challenge it, it will go back and be like, oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're so right.
So an interesting study that comes to mind around that is when psychologists did an experiment where they took a person, a couple of experiments actually. The first one is where they took a person and showed them a bunch of lines, short and long, and said which one's longer. And every single time the person would be like, well, duh, this one, that's the longest one is the longest one. And then they'd put them in a room with a bunch of people that they'd never met before. But this person believed that everyone else was an independent participant in the study. They didn't realize they were actors. But in each room that they put this person in, they would ask the same questions. Which line is shorter and which line is longer? And in the rooms where they were put in and all the other so-called participants said that the shorter line was the longer line, it took probably on average 4 repetitions for about 90% of the people to switch their stance.
Yes.
We have such an inherent desire to belong, and an inherent desire to belong at the cost of our own self-integrity. And I think that when we have systems that are so overwhelmingly addicting, powerful, desirable that feed into that, we discount the fact that as human beings, there are flaws.
Mm-hmm.
There are flaws in how we work and how we design and how we can maintain our integrity. And I don't say that in terms of human beings are broken. I just mean if we set the bar to be like, oh, we're all adults and we can all make reasonable decisions. Psychology says that we have
yeah,
some
no,
glitches.
we're not rational.
We're not rational.
I mean, I know this from sales psychology. We don't buy things that are rationally what we should buy because they're good for us. We buy based on emotion. And that's really how we make a lot of decisions in life, based on emotion, and we justify it with logic. Like, oh, I definitely bought that thing because logically made sense, when logically, from objectively, actually didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But it was an emotional decision. So, yeah.
So my concern is that's fine. And it seems like, oh, okay, yeah, no biggie. Like, you don't like the dishes stacked that way and you don't like the dishes stacked that way. It's not a big deal, okay? You might have a ChatGPT battle with your husband about it and eventually work it out because you're forced in proximity into the same space. But what if we extrapolate that to an entire population where 80-90% of people are getting a feedback model and a feedback loop saying this is the truth? And I've seen this. I've seen people post videos where they ask what they believe to be an objective question. And what does it mean for this side of the fence? In America, it's Republicans and Democrats. You know, in health, it could be natural versus medical. There are a million different polarizing opinions out there. And so if you take the 80-90% of people who will be influenced to either change their opinion to adapt to the majority if they're fed in a certain piece of information, or if there are 80-90% of people who will not push back and will perform for the benefit of belonging, what we have is a reinforcement of polarization without the discomfort. Because if you are having a discussion with someone in your house, you are going to get uncomfortable enough to try and understand them. If you are tapping away on your ChatGPT and it simply either reinforces your perspective or creates a certain frame of mind or frame of reference that is most popular, people are just going to adapt to what they believe to be true, as opposed to taking the time to get uncomfortable and understand. That's my greatest concern, that we're going to move away from educating ourselves through discomfort more towards either reaffirming our own opinion or adapting to be better performers. Those seem to be the two outcomes related to that, versus, hey, how can we apply nuance to understand each other better? And the example video that I saw was someone objectively saying, hey, tell me the other side of the perspective. But because they'd already programmed their ChatGPT to talk like them and think like them so much, the ChatGPT's version of objective was incredibly insulting, incredibly demeaning, and incredibly minimizing to apparently this objective opinion. But the person posting the video had no idea.
Yes.
They'd lost touch.
It's a scary thought that we could be headed that way. Yeah.
As much as that's we've gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole there around how AI can be tough and what we need to keep an eye out for. The first step to challenging any concern as a human being is awareness. Okay, let's just have awareness that it can happen. Don't choose the friendly one. Choose the neutral one. So that's step one. But after you've done step one, what I would ask you and what I want to hear your thoughts on are not just the benefits of how to send a better email and what this can do for us currently. What are the benefits that you are seeing, not only for business, but in personal relationships, that if you have enough of a healthy check, do you think, where can AI take us?
Yeah, I mean, look, like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. Like a knife, you can use it to chop up vegetables, make your family dinner. You can use it to hurt someone. So it's a tool. And I think if we see it as a tool, not as a human being or something we outsource our power and decision making to, it can be incredibly helpful. It can be incredibly helpful for us. And in terms of what I'm using it for and where I'm seeing people use it for life and business, I'll just speak to business first, is that in business, it can automate a lot of repetitive tasks for you that would have taken you hours, and it's freeing up your time for creativity, for things that put you back into your zone of genius, for you having more time to innovate and be more creative and serve people in your business better, and depending on what you do. But for me, coaching clients, I can dedicate more time to them and improving my programs, improving my offers, being creative about what it is that I'm putting out, versus I think for even product owners innovating and all the things. But when it comes to and then like some examples of what we've done in my business in terms of AI, for example, we've automated responses to our emails with AI. So we've fed AI all our customer service questions we've received over time. And now it can, when someone says, hey, where's module 2 for this program where I've lost my login, it knows how to respond and say, here's your login details. So we don't need to do that anymore, for example.
Love that.
Yeah. It's still, I would say, not 100%, because you can still hallucinate and be like, module 5 doesn't exist and things like that. And ChatGPT does that all the time. That's one of its biggest problems and drawbacks, is that it hallucinates, and people don't realize that. If you ask it, like, what happened at the Battle of France in 2026? It'll be, oh, this and this happened. And you're like, that doesn't exist. There's no Battle of France in 2026. That hasn't even happened. And then it will lie to you and try and justify why I said that. Oh, but I was just... So yeah, there's things to be aware of. So yes, your ChatGPT can hallucinate. Please remember that. But a good prompt that you can give it is, don't just tell me what I want to hear. So I say this all the time. Do not tell me just what I want to hear. Be objective. Think like an outsider, and then really tell it who to think like and what to think like. So depending on the scenario you're in. So maybe think like a world-class business strategist. Do not tell me just what I want to hear. Give me pros and cons. Give me all sides of the equation if you're asking it to generate a business strategy or whatever. So that's how I use it in business. There's a lot of micro examples. It can do some insane things. And the truth is that most people I haven't even caught up, because it is moving so fast. So by the time you understand one thing, that thing is like ancient history, and we already moved to the next thing. When I started using ChatGPT in 2024, at the end of 2024, agents were the big thing. It was like, next, what's coming is agents. And this was almost unthinkable. And agents are ChatGPT models that can do a task automated on their own. So you tell it something like, hey, can you buy my groceries? And it will look at your grocery list. It will go into the Woolies website. It will add things to cart. It will check out, and it will send groceries, and they will appear at your door tomorrow. Or things like that that were unimaginable. Whereas now that's the reality and standard of ChatGPT. That's nothing new. I mean, some really old agentic models of ChatGPT were able to do that a few months ago. Now they've just released last week a brand new agent model, which I'm sure by the time this episode comes out, we'll be like, oh, that was so long ago. Like, oh my God, that can do even more advanced agentic work. And so it is moving so fast. But in terms of personal life and relationships, I personally don't ever go to ChatGPT for relationship personal advice. The only thing that I do go is parenting advice, but it's more things that I feel like are practical. I have a 1-year-old, and I'm like, oh, is he dropping his nap? When do 1-year-olds drop their nap? Things like that. Like, he didn't want to sleep today. But anything more than that, I really try to rely on myself, on the inner tools that I have, or I try and prompt it to give me tools, not to give me resolutions. So instead of saying, hey, I had a fight with my husband, how do I handle this? And then I know ChatGPT would come in and be like, wow, you did this and that was good, and he said that and that wasn't good, and resolve it this way. I don't want it to act as an intermediary. I might say, I had a fight with my husband. What are some good tools that I can use to support me in this? Or what are some ways that I can think about this to support me in this? So that would be a way that I would use it. That's how I also use it in business. Instead of, hey, what should I do? Or what should I sell? Or what should I launch? I'd be more like, hey, these are my options, and this is the constraints that I'm working with, and this is what I desire. What are some scenarios and options for me to consider here? Or what are things that I haven't considered? And I think that's a really healthy way to use it versus asking it to be the mediator of your life.
Yeah. information versus integration.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy to go to ChatGPT to obtain some information. But when it comes to integration, that's a very human experience.
Yes.
I have been someone who had a wealth of knowledge and knew the right thing to do, knew the right thing to say, and found it was detriment to my relationship because I would shame spiral. I'd be like, okay, later, if I talk to someone else, I knew the exact right thing to do or say. But in the moment, how am I going to have a strong enough relationship with my own body, with my own self? And like, we can do all sorts of complex exercises and we can spend 20 years in therapy to find out, oh, why do I do that?
Yeah.
What's a pattern that I can observe, as opposed to a primary hidden pattern when we have a toolkit to be able to reset it that allows us to show up and operate differently within the space in the moment. And you can never convince me that ChatGPT will ever get good enough to support you with that. And even if it can, are you in the relationship or is your ChatGPT? And then let's just say, again, something that stood out for me a lot lately around AI is, are we just getting good at performing? And that's not relationship, that's not connection, that's not authenticity.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And I really wanted to touch on something that's been on my mind a lot recently, and that is the challenge around AI and how useful it can be to get rid of simple, boring tasks. But I want to chat to you about something that's been on my mind. When I had my first job, I went and I helped out my dad to do filing at his business. It was the most boring, mind-numbing, annoying experience. I would sit in a dark room with no windows and just go through this filing cabinet trying to organize them and catalog them. And then I'd go upstairs and I'd just have to answer the phone. And it's not like I was having a deep and meaningful with anyone on the other side. Hi, welcome to the business. How can I direct your call? I hated it. But I obtained value from it because I got paid. And also looking back, there are some interesting things that I learned about that experience. I learned how to be bored and productive. I learned grit. I learned that I could be disappointed in a mistake that I'd made and still have to do the job, and that, bless, the world doesn't care.
The world won't stop.
Don't care if you're in a shame spiral. It doesn't care if you're in a shame spiral. That's an important thing in business and in life to integrate. Okay. If I can be disappointed in myself, but also I have to be able to coach myself through not having a shame spiral that overtakes me. Those are things that I learned through boring, menial tasks, and also how I gained a sense of accomplishment. I remember that first paycheck. I vividly remember. I went out and I bought myself a $10 pair of leggings from Supre and a 6-pack of nuggets from McDonald's. And it was the best. I still remember it was the best
height of
money
achievement
I've ever spent. I was so proud of myself. And like, it's menial labor. It's menial wages too. I would love to hear your thoughts on, as human beings, there is a little bit of a creep, maybe a little bit more than a little bit of a creep around AI taking menial jobs that also teach us grit.
a little bit more.
But I don't know. And also the larger jobs, that sense of satisfaction and purpose that as human beings we derive from tough work, from discomfort. We might finish the end of the day exhausted and annoyed at the filing cabinets or our co-workers or a contractor or whatever it is. But purpose is part of being a human. What are your thoughts on that, and where we can perhaps hold space for that difficult analysis around accepting and embracing the benefits of AI, but also spending conscious time and awareness about what does that mean for us as humans to have purpose, to sit in discomfort, and also like for our young people as well. There might be the annoying, boring jobs. Okay, so how else are we going to be teaching our kids the things that can only be learnt through boring grit? And also resilience, purpose, a sense of accomplishment from being able to earn boring menial wages as well, so that they can learn how to eventually have big shiny jobs that we all say I don't want to do the menial work for, but hey, we got here because we had to do all those steps in between. As human beings, we have that capacity. You know, where are you at with that? I can see a million different pathways, but I'm keen to hear what you think.
That's a tough one, and I don't think I have any good answers in terms of where to go. I know where we're at, and I completely agree that with what's happening with AI right now, the prediction, a very strong prediction, is that within the next, on the kind of like tighter scale, within the next 2 years, a large percent of menial, if we want to call them, or low level jobs will be wiped out that are mechanical, that can be done by a computer. Some of them you wouldn't even label menial. There could be a graphic designer, it could be a data analyst. I wouldn't necessarily say they're menial, but they are things that can be done by a computer. And the prediction is that on the worst end of the scale is within the next 2 years, they will be wiped out completely. And on the best end of the scale is within the next 10 years. There is no scale or model that says they will not ever be wiped out. Pretty much every model is just a question of when, not if. And so this is why I say I think AI is a very relevant conversation, because it's not something that you will think about in 50 years, or it's like a next generation problem. You know, like climate change, someone else can think about that in 500 years, whether or not that's an issue for us. Well, no, AI is a 10-year on the maximum scale problem. And so that is a very relevant question, because this is a question that everyone is asking themselves. If jobs are wiped out and you don't have work, how do we derive our purpose as humans, and what do humans do? Because a lot of people do derive purpose from their job, from their work, and not just life purpose, but developing skills like resilience, like grit, perseverance. And how do we develop those things if we're in a cushioned world where imagining, there's an article that I was posting about recently. It's a scenario research paper done by a group of extremely intelligent, brilliant AI researchers who have been in this field for 10 to 20 years since the introduction of AI, who have predicted pretty much how AI was going to evolve. And so in 2021, they said by 2023, there will be chatbots. And lo and behold, we have chatbots. And so they created this paper called the 2027 scenario, and it predicts what's going to happen over the next 10 years in the AI space. Now, this scenario diverges in 2027 from two angles. It can be like scenario A and scenario B, depending on how they think we handle it. But in both of those scenarios, AI takes over pretty much all of our jobs. And now that doesn't mean doom and gloom. That doesn't mean we're out on the street, where humanity is generally better off in terms of poverty is eliminated. There is a UBI, I think it's called UBI, like universal something income. So everyone has a universal
basic income.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I thought so. UBI, and so we're on the surface better off. That's what it wants us to think, at least. But it doesn't adequately explain what we are doing to derive and create those skills within us. How am I going to raise my kids? I always think about this in a world where everything's instantly accessible. You don't really have to strive for anything. You don't have to go out and even get a job. You know what I mean? Like even just getting a job. I got my first job at 15, and that's a skill. That's a growth phase of your life, because you're learning how to be on time somewhere, how to be responsible, how to take directions from someone, how to show respect, communicate with other people. There's a lot of things that we learn through work. And if that's taken away, it's going to be a big question for us as humans. Like, how do we play in this new world? And we're extremely resilient and smart. So I'm sure we will create ways. There'll be other ways that we will learn this, but it's going to look very different to how it's looked up until now. So I don't think I have a good answer, but I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, and the questions are the best place to start. What fascinates me is that apparently, in order to have purpose and fulfillment, human beings require a certain level of discomfort. They require a certain level of stress. And human beings put in an environment where they have no negative stimulus, no real need to push themselves, are much more likely to develop depressive tendencies, because they don't have that reference, that point of reference, and that evidence that has been provided by their own selves to say, I have the capability to cope with stress. Small moments of stress become really big moments of stress very quickly, because instead of developing grit, what they are doing is reducing external stimulus that creates stress so that when stress comes along, it's all the more catastrophic. And that's where satisfaction for human beings often comes from, a healthy balance between external stress and drive, so purpose. And a healthy balance for that creates satisfaction. It creates regulation. It creates purpose, fulfillment, and an ability to lean into discomfort support. It leans into our ability to support others and be able to provide and create a healthy community, because community requires acceptance of discomfort. It requires acceptance of inconvenience. But we learn that from somewhere. And without a certain level of negative stimulus as human beings, we're actually not satisfied. So I think that needs to be a much bigger part of the conversation. Not how do we make ourselves unhappy, but how do we maintain balance as human beings in terms of what it means to have satisfaction. And I see arguments turning towards, hey, we'll just play sports or something instead, and
will that be enough? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No.
I think as human beings, we're much more complex. And as the word that I used before, there's a divine element to being human that requires that we have an element of stress that allows us to lean into purpose and how we can support others, how we can build community, and how can we can learn more about our own selves through tough times, through challenges, through grit. And I think that there's a huge narrative around stress being bad. There are certain elements of stress that are bad. There are positive elements to stress, and there are positive elements to the richness of what it means to be human. And I think that needs to be a little bit more front and center of the conversation. Yeah. And I'd love to keep teasing that out and not shy away from it just because it's a little complex.
I completely agree. I just thought of things like Neuralink that I inherently think that's bad, but putting that aside, just that takes away your ability to experience the stress of learning, the stress of being in an environment where you are learning something new. And I have a 6-year-old now, and he's in year 1. And so every day he's learning something new. And every now and again, he'll be like, I can't do this. That's too hard. And imagine if we don't give our kids or ourselves environments where we can foster the ability to understand that things are not hard and that we can work through them and we can grow through them because they're just instantly available. So Neuralink, if it's installed in your brain and you download all the information of the world instantly, what capacity do you have then to learn something new and to experience that discomfort?
Yeah, and then there's that argument for what's truth.
Yeah,
because Neuralink will provide one answer, right?
That would be the next level of very serious questions, which I think, if we come to that, we gotta
episode number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I agree. It's really good questions to ask, and you might not have the answers, and that's okay. That's part of sitting in that discomfort and being like, it's an interesting question. It's an interesting conversation that we should be having without necessarily coming into it with answers. It's just coming into it with questions, and that's still fine.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think the more answers you have as opposed to being able to sit with questions, the further removed you are from really truthful solutions. So I love the richness of that. And thank you so much, Milana, for coming and diving deep with me about that today.
You're welcome. It's great.
I would love to hear, first of all, what we do like to ask our guests is to answer a question that the previous guest has left. So the question that our previous guest left for our next guest was, how did you play as a child?
Ooh, what a great question. How did I play as a child? As a child, I spent most of my time outside. And the majority of it was imaginative play. So like my mum would tell me my favorite thing was to make cakes out of sand and serve them to all my family members to enjoy, and I would expect them to eat them. And everyone thought it was very funny and hilarious, but I'd be there like, no, I worked very hard on that. You have to try it. And it'd be like little balls of sand. So my childhood, I spent a lot of time outside, was very rarely in the house. This is pre-AI, pre-TV, pre-internet, not pre-TV. We had TV, but TV wasn't often on and it just wasn't something we used much. So it was a lot of imaginative play, and it was great. It was a great time. And I think there's a little bit of nostalgia around the times of being a child and spending so much time outside, because I observe kids today and it's very rare to see kids out in the street, whereas when I was a kid, like all my neighborhood friends would come to my door and they'd knock on the door and be like, Milana. And they would call me and then we would all go out on the street and play together.
Yeah.
And so that was the norm.
I love
And
that.
it's kind of sad that that has died down. But
We used to
yeah.
have a competition over who had the most scars on their leg
Yeah.
because we'd knock on the doors, go like everyone would grab their rollerblades or their
Yes.
bikes, and the more scars you had on your leg from going flying off, going down this hill like a million miles a minute and swerving at the last second down the bottom of the road before you hit the main road. Ooh, yeah, yeah, that's my memory, and that's valuable to me as an adult. My scars may have faded, but the story's still good.
Yes, absolutely.
I would love to hear from you what question you would like to leave for our next guest.
Ooh, okay. What question would I love? I think let me leave a deep one. If there was one thing that you can change about the world today, just one thing, social policy, one law, one rule, one anything, what would it be?
I love that. Well, I just want to thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Milana. I have really enjoyed this. I enjoy like just sitting in the questions and just allowing the answers to be something organic that can grow from there. And just like showing all of us it's okay to sit in the unknown and it's okay to ask these kinds of questions. And I think we really create a space to ask these questions when we can come to the conversation with some softness, with some openness, with some curiosity and some comfort that we don't have all the answers. And I think that's definitely what you've brought to the podcast today. And I really want to thank you for sharing that, your curiosity, your passion, and also just the richness of the complexity of this topic. So thank you so much.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
I would love to hear how we can find you.
You can find me on Instagram. My handle is at Milana Sarenac. So same as my name. And that's probably the main place that I'm on. I'm also on TikTok. Instagram's my kind of jam. That's my main place.
Beautiful. And we'll pop that in the show notes so everyone can find you too. And I hope everyone has enjoyed this conversation. If you have some deeper questions, something that's come up for you that might feel a little bit stretchy, I love having these conversations. Come hang out on Instagram at any time. You can find both of us in the show notes and we would love to hear from you. Please press subscribe and follow along for this podcast to dive deeper into all things connection and now AI as well. We are blessed to be with you and thank you for being here. We'll see you on the next episode.